The weight of empty corridors Tobias Crane pushed his cleaning cart through the sterile hallways of Outpost Meridian with mechanical precision. His gray uniform hung loose on his thin frame. At 34, he looked older. The war had carved deep lines into his face and left shadows under his green eyes that never quite faded. His sandy hair, streaked with premature gray, fell across his forehead as he mopped the floors that thousands of alien feet crossed each day. The station orbited a purple gas giant in the Andromeda sector. Beings from 70 different worlds worked here, studying everything from quantum mechanics to biological warfare. Tobias kept his head down and avoided eye contact. Most aliens barely noticed the human janitor. That was exactly how he preferred it. His hands shook slightly as he worked. They always did now. The tremor had started after the Battle of Keswick Moon, where he had been the only survivor of his unit. Sometimes at night, he still heard the screams. The therapy sessions the military provided had not helped. The medications made him feel hollow, so he had requested the most remote posting available. Outpost Meridian was so far from Earth that messages took 3 weeks to arrive. A group of Thalorian scientists walked past him, their crystalline bodies refracting the station's blue lights into rainbow patterns. They spoke in their musical language, and though Tobias's translator implant could understand them, he chose not to listen. He had learned that ignorance was easier than involvement. His supervisor, a blob-like Gelarian named Wex, oozed around the corner. The creature communicated through color, changes in its translucent skin. Today, the colors flickered with irritation. Tobias human. Wex's voice came through the translator with a wet, gurgling quality. Assignment change. You clean restricted Section 7 tonight. Previous cleaner refused. Too scared. Tobias paused in his mopping. What's in Section 7? The colors on Wex's body shifted to dark purple, the Gelarian equivalent of nervousness. The Void Wyrm. Very dangerous. But you military, yes? You seen danger before. Guards there to protect. You just clean outside observation rooms. No contact with creature. Every instinct told Tobias to refuse. But refusing meant questions, meant attention, meant possibly losing the one job that let him disappear into routine. Fine. When do I start? Now. Report to Security Checkpoint 7 Alpha. They give you clearance badge. Wex oozed away quickly, as if eager to escape the conversation. Into the darkness Section 7 existed in the deepest part of the station, where the walls were reinforced triple thickness and the lighting stayed permanently dim. Tobias passed through 5 security checkpoints. Each guard was more heavily armed than the last. They were mostly Draconi, massive reptilian beings bred for combat. Their yellow eyes followed Tobias with barely concealed contempt. Another human, one guard hissed to his companion. Command must have run out of real cleaners. Tobias said nothing. He had heard worse. He simply took his clearance badge and his cleaning supplies and walked toward the observation deck. The door before him was 10 feet of solid durasteel. Warning signs in 20 languages covered its surface. The most prominent read, Extreme Danger, Psionic Entity, Maintain Minimum Distance. The door opened with a pneumatic hiss that sounded like a giant breathing. Tobias stepped into a circular room ringed with monitors and control panels. One entire wall was transparent aluminum, looking down into a massive chamber below. Energy barriers shimmered in layers, creating a prison of light. And there, in the center of that prison, was the most magnificent and terrible thing Tobias had ever seen. The creature was perhaps 50 feet from nose to tail. Its body resembled Earth's mythological dragons, but where those were reptilian, this being seemed to be made of living night. Its scales were black, but not the black of paint or shadow. This was the black of deep space, the void between stars. When it moved, Tiny points of light flickered across its hide like distant galaxies. Its wings were folded against its back, massive membranes that seemed too delicate to support the creature's bulk, yet rippled with barely contained power. But it was the eyes that caught Tobias and would not let him go. They were silver, luminous, ancient beyond measure, and they were looking directly at him. The first connection Tobias stood frozen. His cleaning supplies clattered to the floor from numb fingers. The dragon, the Void Wyrm, the creature that supposedly killed everything that came near it, took a single step forward. The movement was cautious, almost tentative. It lowered its massive head until those silver eyes were level with the window. A sound filled Tobias's mind. Not words, not exactly. It was more like emotions made audible. Loneliness, confusion, pain, and underneath it all, a desperate, aching hope. The guards in the security station began shouting. Alarms blared. Human, step away from the window. The creature has activated. We're reading massive psionic spikes. But Tobias could not move. He was barely breathing. For 3 years, since Keswick Moon, he had felt nothing but numbness and grief. Therapy called it survivor's guilt, mixed with post-traumatic stress. He called it being dead while still breathing. But now, looking into those silver eyes, he felt something stir in the frozen wasteland of his chest. The dragon made a sound. It started as a rumble deep in its throat, then rose into something between a purr and a song. The vibration traveled through the reinforced glass, through the floor, into Tobias's bones. And somehow, impossibly, he understood. You are alone too, Tobias whispered. The dragon's eyes widened. It pressed one massive claw against the energy barrier. Sparks danced where it touched. Every monitor in the observation deck went wild. Scientists and military officers came running from every direction, but Tobias barely noticed them. He walked to the glass and placed his hand against it, matching where the dragon's claw rested on the other side. The barrier between them hummed with enough energy to vaporize a tank. Yet both human and creature held perfectly still, palms almost touching across the impossible divide. Sir, you need to move away, a Draconite guard insisted, gripping Tobias's shoulder. That thing could liquefy your brain with a thought. It's killed telepaths just by existing near them. Tobias shrugged off the grip. Then why am I still standing? No one had an answer. The head of security, a 4-armed Rexian named Commander Thex, arrived breathing heavily. What is happening? That creature has been catatonic for 18 months. Barely moved, barely ate. Now suddenly it's awake and focused. Tobias finally turned away from the window. What do you mean? 18 months. Commander Thex's 4 hands moved in agitation. We captured the Void Wyrm after it destroyed 3 warships in the Outer Rim. It killed 73 beings during capture. Section 7 existed in the deepest part of the station, where the walls were reinforced triple thickness and the lighting stayed permanently dim. Tobias passed through 5 security checkpoints. Each guard was more heavily armed than the last. They were mostly Draconi, massive reptilian beings bred for combat. Their yellow eyes followed Tobias with barely concealed contempt. Another human, one guard hissed to his companion. Command must have run out of real cleaners. Tobias said nothing. He had heard worse. He simply took his clearance badge and his cleaning supplies and walked toward the observation deck. The door before him was 10 feet of solid durasteel. Warning signs in 20 languages covered its surface. The most prominent read, Extreme Danger, Psionic Entity, Maintain, Minimum Distance. The door opened with a pneumatic hiss that sounded like a giant breathing. Tobias stepped into a circular room ringed with monitors and control panels. One entire wall was transparent aluminum, looking down into a massive chamber below. Energy barriers shimmered in layers. creating a prison of light dot, and there, in the center of that prison, was the most magnificent and terrible thing Tobias had ever seen. The creature was perhaps 50 feet from nose to tail. Its body resembled Earth's mythological dragons, but where those were reptilian, this being seemed to be made of living night. Its scales were black, but not the black of paint or shadow. This was the black of deep space, the void between stars. When it moved, tiny points of light flickered across its hide like distant galaxies. Its wings were folded against its back, massive membranes that seemed too delicate to support the creature's bulk, yet rippled with barely contained power. But it was the eyes that caught Tobias and would not let him go. They were silver, luminous, ancient beyond measure, and they were looking directly at him. Got the first connection. Tobias stood frozen. His cleaning supplies clattered to the floor from numb fingers. The dragon, the Void Wyrm, the creature that supposedly killed everything that came near it, took a single step forward. The movement was cautious, almost tentative. It lowered its massive head until those silver eyes were level with the window. A sound filled Tobias's mind. Not words, not exactly. It was more like emotions made audible. Loneliness, confusion, pain, and underneath it all, a desperate, aching hope. The guards in the security station began shouting. Alarms blared. Human, step away from the window. The creature has activated. We're reading massive psionic spikes. But Tobias could not move. He was barely breathing. For 3 years, since Keswick Moon, he had felt nothing but numbness and grief. Therapy called it survivor's guilt mixed with post-traumatic stress. He called it being dead while still breathing. But now, looking into those silver eyes, he felt something stir in the frozen wasteland of his chest. The dragon made a sound. It started as a rumble deep in its throat, then rose into something between a purr and a song. The vibration traveled through the reinforced glass, through the floor, into Tobias's bones. And somehow, impossibly, he understood. You are alone too, Tobias whispered. The dragon's eyes widened. It pressed one massive claw against the energy barrier. Sparks danced where it touched. Every monitor in the observation deck went wild. Scientists and military officers came running from every direction, but Tobias barely noticed them. He walked to the glass and placed his hand against it, matching where the dragon's claw rested on the other side. The barrier between them hummed with enough energy to vaporize a tank. Yet both human and creature held perfectly still, palms almost touching across the impossible divide. Sir, you need to move away, a Draconite guard insisted, gripping Tobias's shoulder. That thing could liquefy your brain with a thought. It's killed telepaths just by existing near them. Tobias shrugged off the grip. Then why am I still standing? No one had an answer. The head of security, a 4-armed Rexian named Commander Thex, arrived breathing heavily. What is happening? That creature has been catatonic for 18 months. It barely moved, barely ate. Now suddenly it's awake and focused. Tobias finally turned away from the window. What do you mean? 18 months. Commander Thex's 4 hands moved in agitation. We captured the Void Wyrm after it destroyed 3 warships in the Outer Rim. It killed 73 beings during capture. We thought we could study it, learn from it, maybe even weaponize its abilities. But it shut down, went into some kind of hibernation state. The xenobiologists said it was dying. Thex looked at the dragon, then back at Tobias. Until you walked in here. I'm just a janitor, Tobias said quietly. I'm nobody. Apparently, a new voice said from the doorway, you are somebody to that creature. The scholar's interest, Dr. Rena Voss stood in the entrance, datapad in hand. She was Tertian, a species known for their intellectual prowess. She stood barely 5 feet tall, with skin that shifted through pale blue and green tones depending on her mood. Her large eyes, taking up almost a third of her face, blinked slowly as she studied both Tobias and the dragon. "I'm the lead xenobiologist on this project," she continued, walking closer. "I've studied the Void Wyrm for over a year. It's the last of its kind. Its species, the Etherians, were ancient when most civilizations were still learning to make fire. They were bonded with what the old texts called star pilots, beings chosen across species lines to share consciousness with the Wyrms. Fairy tales," Commander Thex scoffed. "Legends to justify dragon worship." "Perhaps," Dr. Voss said, "but legends often have roots in truth." She looked at Tobias with those enormous eyes. "What's your name, janitor?" "Tobias Crane, former Corporal, Earth Defense Forces. Military background. Interesting." She tapped notes into her datapad. "Tell me, Tobias Crane, what did you feel when you looked at the Void Wyrm?" Tobias hesitated. Talking about feelings was not something he did, but something about Dr. Voss's calm demeanor made him answer honestly. "Recognition. Like looking at a broken mirror and seeing myself looking back." The xenobiologist's skin flickered rapidly through several colors, indicating excitement. "Remarkable. The worm must have sensed a kindred spirit. Both isolated. Both traumatized. Both convinced you're alone." "I am alone," Tobias said flatly. "Not anymore." Dr. Voss gestured to the chamber below. The dragon had not moved. It still held its claw against the barrier, waiting. That creature has waited centuries for connection. It went into stasis because it had given up hope of ever finding its pilot. "I'm not a pilot. I'm nobody. You keep saying that." Dr. Voss smiled, showing pointed teeth. "But the Void Wyrm disagrees. And their kind could sense souls across star systems. I think it knows something you haven't accepted yet." Commander Thex interrupted. "This is all very touching, but that creature is military property. It stays locked in containment. We cannot risk it escaping." "It won't escape," Tobias heard himself say. He did not know where the certainty came from. "It's been trapped in loneliness far longer than it's been trapped in this cell." He turned back to the window. The dragon's eyes had never left him. In their silver depths, Tobias saw his own isolation reflected and understood. They were the same. Both warriors. Both survivors. Both convinced they were the last of their kind. "I want to go in there," Tobias said. Every being in the room erupted in protest. Commander Thex's forearms waved wildly. "Absolutely not. That creature is a weapon. It could kill you before you took 3 steps. "Then I'll be dead," Tobias said simply. "But I don't think it will kill me." Dr. Voss studied him carefully. "You're serious?" "I haven't been serious about anything in 3 years. But yes, I'm serious now." The xenobiologist was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her communication device. "I need to contact someone. Someone whose authority supersedes even Commander Thex's. If what I suspect is true, we're witnessing something that hasn't happened in 10,000 years. And if I'm right, this could change everything we know about human potential in the galaxy." She looked at Tobias with something like wonder. "The stars chose you, Tobias Crane. I don't think you get to say no." When royalty descends, 3 days passed before Tobias was allowed near the dragon again. Commander Thex had locked down Section 7 completely, claiming security protocols required review. But Tobias knew the real reason. The military was terrified of what might happen if human and worm actually connected. During those 3 days, Tobias could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the dragon's presence in his mind. Not words, but sensations. Loneliness that echoed his own. Curiosity mixed with caution. And underneath it all, a patient waiting that felt eternal. On the 4th morning, Dr. Voss appeared at his quarters. Her skin was cycling through nervous patterns of teal and violet. "Get dressed in something clean. We have a visitor. Someone very important." "Who?" Tobias asked, pulling on his least worn uniform. "Empress Callista of the Valtorian Empire. She rules 300 worlds and commands fleets that could turn planets to dust. When she heard about you and the Void Wyrm, she canceled diplomatic meetings with 6 other governments and came here personally." Dr. Voss's eyes were wider than usual. Nobody says no to Empress Callista. 20 minutes later, Tobias stood in the station's main hangar as a ship descended that made every other vessel look like a child's toy. It was sleek and dangerous, colored deep crimson with gold accents. The hull alone probably cost more than Earth's entire annual budget. The airlock opened. First came guards in ceremonial armor that somehow looked both beautiful and lethal. Then came advisors carrying data crystals and holographic projectors. Finally, Empress Callista herself stepped into the hangar. She was Valtorian, a species that resembled humans, but had evolved on a world with triple Earth's gravity. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, built with lean muscle that suggested coiled strength. Her skin was bronze, decorated with luminescent tattoos that flowed in patterns down her arms. Her hair fell in midnight black waves to her waist, woven with gold chains. But it was her eyes that commanded attention. They were golden, bright as twin suns, and when they fixed on something, you felt the weight of absolute authority. Those eyes found Tobias immediately. She crossed the hangar with movements that were both graceful and predatory. Everyone else in the room bowed deeply. Tobias, not knowing protocol, simply stood straight like a soldier at attention. A small smile touched Callista's lips. "You must be Tobias Crane, the human who caught a dragon's attention." "Your Majesty," Dr. Voss whispered urgently. "You're supposed to bow." "I don't bow," Tobias said quietly. He had stopped following orders that felt wrong years ago. "With respect, your empire doesn't include Earth. I'm not your subject." The advisors gasped. The guards reached for their weapons. But Callista held up one hand, and everyone froze. Her smile widened slightly. "Good. I have enough people who bow and scrape. I prefer those who speak truth." She circled him slowly, studying him like a scientist examining a specimen. "You're damaged. I can see it in your eyes. War trauma. Survivor's guilt. You came here to hide from yourself." "Yes," Tobias said. No point in lying to someone who could apparently read people like books. "And now a creature that could destroy this entire station has chosen you as its companion. Do you understand how impossible that is?" Callista stopped in front of him. "The Void Wyrms were ancient when my species learned to walk upright. They bonded with legendary heroes, wise rulers, beings of exceptional character, not broken janitors from backwater worlds. I didn't ask for this." Tobias said, "No," which makes it even more interesting. Callista turned to Dr. Voss. "Show me." The observation. They gathered in the observation deck overlooking the dragon's chamber. Callista stood at the window, her guards forming a protective semicircle behind her. The worm was awake, pacing the confines of its prison with restless energy. The moment Tobias entered the room, the dragon's head snapped toward him. It stopped moving entirely, focused completely on the human. "Extraordinary," Callista murmured. "I've seen war beasts, trained predators, even sentient weapons. But I've never seen anything look at someone the way that creature looks at you." Tobias walked to the window. Immediately, the dragon approached, moving until its massive head was level with him. Those silver eyes met his green ones. The connection was instant, overwhelming. Emotions flooded through Tobias that were not his own. Joy at seeing him, frustration at the barriers between them, and underneath, a bond that felt older than stars. "It's trying to talk to him," Dr. Voss said, watching her instruments. The psionic readings are off every scale I have. But instead of attacking his mind, the worm is being incredibly gentle, like it's afraid of breaking something fragile. Callista moved closer, studying both human and dragon. In the old texts, the bond between worm and pilot was sacred. They shared thoughts, feelings, even life force. A bonded pair could perform feats that seemed like magic. They could fly between stars without ships. They could heal wounds that should be fatal. They were unstoppable. Those are myths, Commander Vex protested. Stories to entertain children. Perhaps. Callista's golden eyes never left the scene before her. Or perhaps my ancestors understood things we've forgotten in our rush to technology and warfare. She looked at Tobias. Do you want to go in there? Yes, Tobias answered without hesitation. Even knowing you might die? I've been dead for 3 years. This would just make it official. Callista studied him for a long moment. Then she laughed, a sound like bells made of crystal. You humans are either the bravest fools or the most foolish brave beings in the galaxy. I haven't decided which. She turned to Commander Vex. Open the chamber. Your Majesty. I cannot allow. You can, and you will. Callista's voice did not rise. But suddenly, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I did not travel 18 light years to watch through glass. Open the chamber, or I will have my engineers tear this station apart to reach it. Commander Vex's scales turned pale with fear. As you command, Your Majesty. The first touch they made. Tobias wore an environmental suit with medical monitors. Dr. Voss insisted on at least that much precaution. A strike team of 12 heavily armed guards accompanied him to the chamber entrance. Energy weapons were trained on the dragon from 6 different angles. If it makes one aggressive move, Commander Vex warned, we will fire everything we have. Tobias barely heard him. His entire focus was on the massive door opening before him. The energy barriers flickered off one by one. Between him and the dragon, there was suddenly nothing but air. The worm had gone completely still. It watched Tobias with an intensity that should have been frightening. Instead, Tobias felt a strange calm settle over him. He took one step forward, then another. Behind him, he heard weapons powering up, ready to fire. Hold fire, Callista's voice commanded. Let this happen. Tobias walked across the chamber floor. Each step felt momentous, like crossing a bridge between worlds. The dragon did not move, did not even seem to breathe. It simply waited with patience that spoke of centuries. Finally, Tobias stood before the creature. Up close, it was even more magnificent. The scales were not merely black, but contained swirling depths, as if each one held a galaxy inside. The silver eyes were large as dinner plates, watching him with intelligence that was undeniable. Hello, Tobias said softly. His voice sounded small in the vast chamber. I'm Tobias. I think we're both pretty broken. But maybe broken things can fit together. The dragon lowered its enormous head. Slowly, carefully, it moved forward until its snout was inches from Tobias's chest. This close, he could feel the heat radiating from its body, could hear the deep rumble of its breathing. One wrong move, one moment of aggression, and he would die before he could even scream. Instead, the dragon made a sound. It started low, almost like a purr, then rose into something musical and heartbreaking. Tobias felt tears on his face without realizing he was crying. The sound carried everything the creature felt. Loneliness stretching across centuries. The pain of being the last. The desperate hope that maybe, finally, it had found what it had been searching for. Tobias lifted his hand. His fingers trembled as he reached toward the dragon's scaled snout. Behind him, someone shouted a warning. He did not listen. His palm touched the Wyrm's face. The world exploded into light. The bonding Tobias fell to his knees. His mind opened like a flower, and suddenly he was not alone inside his own head. Learning to walk together 6 weeks passed on the imperial world of Voltura Prime. Tobias and Nethys had been given an entire mountain estate, far from the capital city, but close enough that scholars could visit daily. The estate sat on a cliff overlooking an endless ocean. The air smelled of salt and something sweet Tobias could not identify. 3 moons hung in the purple sky, never quite setting completely. Tobias stood on the balcony of the main house, watching Nethys practice flight maneuvers. The dragon had not been allowed to truly fly for nearly 2 years. Now, given space and freedom, Nethys moved through the air like poetry made physical. Wings that spanned 80 feet caught updrafts and spiraled higher, then dove toward the waves before pulling up at the last moment. Through their bond, Tobias felt every movement. The strain in wing muscles, the rush of wind, the pure joy of freedom. His own body swayed unconsciously, mimicking turns he was not physically making. "You're doing it again," Dr. Voss said from behind him. She had become their primary liaison, visiting almost daily. Her skin colors had settled into calmer patterns now that she was not constantly anxious. "Your neural patterns synchronize more each day. Soon you won't be able to tell where you end and Nethys begins." "Is that bad?" Tobias asked. "I don't know. Nobody does. This hasn't happened in recorded history." She pulled out her datapad, showing him readings that meant little to Tobias. "But I can tell you this. You're healing. The trauma markers in your brain activity are decreasing. The nightmares? Gone," Tobias admitted. "Or at least, when they come, Nethys is there. Shared pain is somehow less painful." Nethys landed on the balcony with grace that should have been impossible for something so large. The dragon folded its wings and moved close to Tobias, resting its massive head against his shoulder. The gesture was protective and affectionate at once. "The Empress wants to see you both tomorrow," Dr. Voss said. "She has news." And she seemed concerned. Shadows gathering the imperial palace was a structure that defied physics. It seemed to float above the capital city, held aloft by technology Tobias did not understand. Gardens hung in midair, connected by bridges of light. Waterfalls flowed upward before dispersing into mist. It was beautiful and unsettling at the same time. Empress Callista received them in a private chamber rather than the throne room. She wore simpler clothes than usual, though even her casual attire probably cost more than a starship. Her golden eyes were troubled. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "Actually, we have several problems, but one is immediate." She activated a holographic display. It showed star maps with multiple points highlighted in red. "These are attacks. Hit-and-run raids on civilian targets across 6 sectors. The attackers are taking people, especially those with unusual abilities. Telepaths, empaths, anyone with psionic potential." "Who's behind it?" Tobias asked. "A group calling themselves the Purity Legion. They're human supremacists who believe humanity should rule the galaxy. They think aliens are inferior and should be eliminated or enslaved." Callista's voice carried disgust. "Ironically, they're using alien technology and recruiting non-human mercenaries to do their dirty work." Tobias felt sick. He had met people like that during his military service. Zealots who could not see past their own prejudices. What does this have to do with us? They know about you, about your bond with Nethys, and they want you both. Callista changed the display. Now it showed intercepted communications. Tobias recognized his own face in several images. "They see you as the ultimate weapon. A human bonded to the most powerful creature in the known galaxy. In their twisted logic, it proves human superiority. They intend to capture you, break your will, and use you as their champion." Nethys growled, a sound that vibrated through the floor. They will not take my pilot. No, Callista agreed. They won't. But they will try, and their attempts will put innocent lives at risk. She looked at Tobias seriously. I need to know. Are you and Nethys ready? Can you fight if necessary? Tobias thought about the question. 6 weeks ago, he would have said no. He had been broken, lost, convinced he was useless. But the bond had changed him. Every day with Nethys made him stronger, made him remember who he had been before the war broke him. We can fight, Tobias said. But I don't want to. I've had enough of war. Sometimes war finds us anyway, Callista said gently. I would not ask this of you unless necessary. But you're not just any soldier anymore. You're a star pilot. The first in 10 millennia. People will look to you, whether you want them to or not. The attack the Purity Legion struck 3 days later. They were not subtle. A fleet of 12 ships dropped out of hyperspace, directly above the Imperial Palace. Alarms shrieked across the capital. Defense grids activated, filling the sky with energy fire. But the attackers had planned well. They had shields strong enough to withstand the initial barrage. Tobias and Nethys were in the gardens when it started. They felt the attack before the alarm sounded, the bond making them sensitive to aggression directed their way. Nethys roared, a sound that shattered windows and sent birds fleeing in terror. They dare, the dragon's voice filled Tobias's mind with fury. They dare attack where we are guests. This insult will not stand. Drop pods rained from the sky. They landed across the floating gardens, disgorging soldiers in black armor. Each one carried weapons designed to kill both human and alien. They moved with military precision, heading directly toward Tobias's location. There, one soldier shouted, "The target! Remember, we need him alive. The beast can be subdued." Subdued? Nethys' laugh was cold and dangerous. They have no idea what they face. Tobias felt something shift inside him. The bond between him and Nethys had been growing stronger, but they had been careful, cautious. Callista had warned them not to push too far too fast. But now, with enemies closing in, with innocent people in danger, caution seemed like a luxury they could not afford. Together? Tobias asked. Together, Nethys confirmed. They stopped being two separate beings and became one. The true bond power flooded through Tobias like lightning. He felt his consciousness expand, merge, transcend the limits of human perception. Suddenly, he could sense the electromagnetic spectrum, could feel gravitational currents, could perceive time itself as something fluid rather than fixed. His body changed. Not dramatically, but enough. His skin took on a faint luminescence, patterns like galaxies swirling across his arms. His eyes shifted from green to silver, matching Nethys' gaze. When he moved, it was with speed and grace that should have been impossible for a human. .NET changed too. The dragon's scales brightened, no longer absorbing light, but reflecting it in prismatic patterns. Wings spread, and suddenly they were not just membranes, but sails that could catch solar winds. That could propel a being across interstellar distances without need for engines or fuel. The attacking soldiers opened fire. Energy bolts that could punch through starship hulls converged on Tobias and Nethys. Neither moved. The attack simply stopped, frozen in mid-air as if time itself had paused. With a casual gesture, Tobias redirected them, sending the energy harmlessly into the sky. "Last chance," Tobias said. His voice carried harmonics it had never possessed before, as if he and Nethys were speaking in perfect unison. "Leave now. Harm no one. We will let you go." The soldier commander laughed. "You're outnumbered 30-1. Surrender or we start killing civilians." "Wrong answer," Nethys and Tobias said together. What happened next would be debated by military strategists for generations. Tobias and Nethys moved as one perfect entity. The dragon's body became a blur of motion, wings creating winds that knocked soldiers off their feet. But it was Tobias who directed their movements with human tactical thinking combined with the dragon's ancient combat instincts. They did not kill. Despite the provocation, despite the danger, they chose restraint. Instead, Tobias and Nethys disabled weapons, destroyed armor, left enemies unconscious but alive. Within 3 minutes, 30 elite soldiers lay scattered across the gardens. Defeated without a single death, the ships above tried to flee. But Nethys spread wings and leaped into the sky. Tobias felt the exhilaration of flight for the first time, truly felt it, as if he were the one with wings. They rose toward the fleet faster than any conventional aircraft. One ship fired a missile. Nethys caught it in mid-flight, redirected its trajectory, and sent it harmlessly into deep space. "Leave," Tobias commanded, his voice amplified by psionic power to reach every ship. "Tell your masters that the star pilot and his worm will not be tools for anyone's crusade. We are not weapons. We are guardians, and we will protect the innocent regardless of species." The fleet retreated, jumping to hyperspace in ragged disorder. On the ground, Imperial forces secured the unconscious soldiers. Not one civilian had been hurt. The gardens had sustained damage, but nothing that could not be repaired. Tobias and Nethys landed gently. As they touched down, the complete merger began to fade. They separated back into two distinct beings, though the bond remained stronger than ever. Tobias stumbled slightly, overwhelmed by the experience. Callista approached slowly, her golden eyes wide with awe. That was remarkable and terrifying. I see now why the old texts spoke of star pilots as if they were living legends. What you two just did should have been impossible. It felt natural, Tobias said, catching his breath. Like this is what we were always meant to do. Perhaps it was, Callista agreed. But now everyone in the galaxy will know. The recordings of this battle will spread. Every faction will want you on their side, or will want you eliminated as a threat. Your quiet life just ended. A new purpose that night, Tobias sat on the cliff edge overlooking the ocean. Nethys lay beside him, the dragon's warmth keeping the evening chill away. The 3 moons reflected on the water, creating paths of light. "I thought I wanted to hide," Tobias said quietly. "After the war, after everything, I just wanted to disappear." "And now?" Nethys asked. "Now I think maybe I was hiding from the wrong thing. I was hiding from pain, from connection, from meaning. But pain is part of life. Connection makes us stronger, and meaning gives us reason to keep going. Wisdom from one so young." Nethys' voice carried affection. "You learn quickly, my pilot." "I had a good teacher," Tobias smiled. He looked up at the stars, scattered across the purple sky in unfamiliar patterns. "There are others out there, aren't there? People suffering. People being hurt by groups like the Purity Legion. People who need help." "Many," Nethys confirmed. "The galaxy is vast. Injustice and cruelty exist everywhere. We could help them. You and me. We don't have to fight unless necessary, but we could protect people. Give hope to those who think they're alone." Tobias looked at his dragon. "What do you think?" "I think," Nethys said slowly, "that I have waited 10,000 years to find someone worthy of the bond. I will not waste this gift. If you wish to be a guardian, then we shall guard. If you wish to bring hope, then we shall shine like a star in darkness. Together, always together." Empress Callista found them there an hour later. She carried documents and official seals. "I took the liberty of having these prepared. Charters granting you authority to act across Valtorian space. letters of introduction to allied governments, access to resources and support networks. And one more thing. She pulled out a pendant on a chain. It was shaped like a star with a dragon's silhouette wrapped around it. This was my grandmother's. She was the last star pilot. I think she would want you to have it. Tobias took the pendant carefully. He could feel the history in it, the weight of legacy. Thank you. For everything. For believing in us when no one else did. Thank me by staying alive and doing good, Callista said. The galaxy is about to change. It needs heroes. Real ones, not the manufactured propaganda kind. She looked at both Tobias and Nethys. You're going to face challenges I cannot imagine. There will be those who fear you, those who hate you, those who want to use you. But there will also be those who need you. Find them, help them. Show the universe that broken things can heal, that loneliness can end, that hope still exists. Epilogue. A new dawn 3 months later, reports began circulating across the galaxy. Stories of a human and a dragon appearing where help was needed most. They stopped a pirate raid on a refugee convoy. They rescued miners trapped on a collapsing asteroid. They negotiated peace between two species on the brink of war, their combined presence too powerful to ignore. Some called them vigilantes. Others called them saviors. Most simply called them the star pilot and his worm, speaking the names with wonder and hope. Tobias Crane, the broken soldier who had wanted to disappear, had found his purpose. Nethys, the lonely dragon who thought it would die alone, had found its partner. Together, they proved that connection was stronger than isolation, that healing was possible even for the most damaged souls, and that sometimes the most unlikely heroes were exactly what the universe needed. They flew between stars, guided by purpose rather than orders, driven by compassion rather than duty. And wherever they went, they left behind the same message. You are not alone. And broken things can be made whole again. In the depths of space. On 1,000 different worlds, people looked up at the stars and believed in miracles once more.